I was thinking it's been 10 years since I started Mighty Missouri Coffee, and that's a big part of my life. That's a big adventure that I've had, and I hadn't had a moment to think about, reflect on 1 year of my business career until the new year, and it kind of hit me. I had a few days, COVID days, and I found some old journals and kind of relived that, and it's like, holy smokes, that's been a trip. We've been talking about like a podcast and doing something because I've met so many interesting people doing something similar, and I think I just have a lot of respect for people who are doing something, and so I thought this would be a good reason to begin, is just like, let's tell this story, because like, wow, what happened? It's like been forever, but it really feels like I'm still very much the guy starting. So I'm joined with Angela Turner, manager at Mighty Missouri Coffee, and Nolan Johnson, owner of Quantum Digital. And
here we are.
I guess we're going to talk about the story of Mighty Mo to begin with.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I started in 2012. And it was out of an idea of just kind of an act of creativity, really, kind of building a brand in the back of my mind. It was going to be Mighty Missouri blank company. I just knew Mighty Missouri. A friend was doing, he was doing like, beer, handcrafted beer or whatever at his place. And I thought that would be really cool. You got to call it Mighty Missouri Brewing Company. And he never did, and I was really frustrated with him for that. But I thought, oh, Mighty Missouri, that's cool. So I was doing a little marketing job at the time and building something on the side. And then I stepped in and thought coffee's really interesting. I used to have a big, A&W root beer mug full of coffee every morning because I'd swim in the mornings. And it was just it was totally utilitarian. I'd dump creamer in it so it would be cold enough to drink as I drove to the pool. But the more you enjoy coffee, the more you step into it. There's a lot there. Mm-hmm. And stepping in, and I started job shadowing some people and learned a little bit about coffee. And then I thought this is it. And so I was going to begin by maybe having someone roast for me, because I didn't know how to roast coffee. But I wanted to do this brand. I wanted it to be after 5 p.m. Like, it was never supposed to be a big thing. It wasn't supposed to be a quit your day job and begin. But I think I had an entrepreneurial itch. And so that's kind of where it started.
When you were doing the 9 to 5 thing, what was the piece that let you know, okay, now it's time to just dive right into this?
I think that I am a creative.
Sure.
And I've known that more and more in retrospect. But I think it was an act of I must do this to flex those muscles a little bit. And so I just was building something. And that's what kept me up at night, out of excitement, is oh, it could be this, it could look like that. And so when I was interested in coffee to begin with, it was that's the thing. And in 2012, there was a small handful of other roasters in the state, and I looked to them. I talked to a few of them and learned from them and trying to figure out what it was. But I was still far from doing it myself. It was once I figured, okay, I'm not going to have a roaster doing it for me. I'm going to have to be the manufacturer myself, which is a way heavier lift, which I think that's the adventure part of it, a way heavier lift than I ever expected. And but that's when I realized I'm going to either have to do this thing or not. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to be a full-fledged effort.
Yeah.
How long did you sit at your job? I know I went, 3 years probably. Mm-hmm. How long did you sit at your job just, when's the right time? When's the right time? When's the right time? How long did that take from the nugget of the idea and the decision, okay, it's going to be coffee?
Yeah.
From that nugget of idea to I'm now self-employed, how long was that timeline?
Well, so the people who I originally talked to, it's a company called Absolute Java. They used to be in Stanton, North Dakota, and I didn't know anything about them. They were roasting coffee, and I don't really have any impression of them beyond the fact that they let me in to their little business. They moved to Rapid City, and I just like job shadowed them a little bit, and they kind of fed me some information about, and I think they were kind of thinking that maybe I could sell for them or something. I'm not really sure what was on their mind, except that they kind of gave me some numbers that I know now to be unrealistic unless I was just misinterpreting exactly what they were talking about. And that was a big piece of it, because I was kind of entry-level marketing position, and the numbers that they were talking about was like, oh, I can live off of that and do something fun, like something creative that would be self-sustaining. So that was really the moment, was like, okay, it's possible. And then I also saw the things that they were doing that I wasn't interested in doing, and thinking, well, even if I did half of what they did, but did it really, really well, I'd be fine. And then it took a little bit of doing of stepping in and working on my own and needing to make it work now. Then I realized maybe those numbers weren't accurate. Exactly. So I was really kind of at a quarter life crisis, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And that opportunity was kind of on the outskirts, and I was still pursuing some classes, some education, and I was working part-time at that point, and a couple part-time jobs. And that's when I was like, this is going to be what I do. And I continued that for a while, just to make, to buy groceries or whatever, as I was beginning this. But at that point I was committed.
When did you get your first roaster? What was it the big roaster you have now, or?
Yeah. So when I was talking to my dad about, what I was going to do with my life, and he gave me some good advice. He said, do something lest you do nothing. And,
That's good.
yeah. And faith is a big part of this journey as well. And it's like, listen to what God is telling you to do. And I wasn't specifically getting no one's knocking on my window saying, hey, Brian, do this or that. But there was just a lot of peace that came with coffee, and that was just felt like me. And so when I talked to my dad about that, he was like, oh, that's interesting. I'd like to learn too. So we both took a roasting class together, and that was in Boston at International Coffee. And when we were looking at the business of it, he helped me get started on the same roaster that we were learning on, which was that ProBot. And so that's the one that we have, and that's the one of them that we have now. Yeah. So that was the first one. And when it came, so I learned how to roast coffee. I learned and I went to a few other places as well, and got a good feeling for how I'm going to develop these roasts and come back. The machine comes in 100 pieces on a big elephant crate, no manual. It's a German company, manufactured in the U.S. or manufactured in Germany and distributed in the U.S. And just no idea how to put this together. Yeah. And there's a heating and air company in town that was like, yeah, we could put it together. What is it? And I sent him some pictures of what it's supposed to look like in the end. And it was an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's bigger than me. It's when I took a class about roasting coffee, we learned the front end inside. It's kind of romantic. It's kind of fun and artsy, and got a really good feel for it. But no one was talking about what was going on behind the scenes, like the chimney, for example. And the fact that when we got it to Bismarck and do one roast, it's pluming black smoke, like towering black smoke. Like, okay, we can't do that. Or it's going out. The chimney was off the side of the building, and there's an office building right next. And it's like their windows are open, which would be this space. Their windows are open, and we're just funneling smoke into their, it was a nightmare. So trying to develop all of that and figure everything out, I didn't know anything about HVAC. I'm not an engineer. I don't have a mechanically inclined mind. And so trying to figure out how to do that without having a chimney. So there's a thing called an afterburner. It incinerates everything. And there would be no aroma, no smoke. And that's what you're supposed to do if you're in a city like Bismarck. But looking into that, because I didn't know, well, that's as big of an investment as the roaster is. So it's like, well, we can't do that. So there's another option. It's called an electrostatic precipitator, and it takes out like 98% of the precipitate in the exhaust. So we tried that, and we hooked it up. It looks like a big washing machine, like a dryer, up coming from the ceiling, and it has these electrically charged filters that would, like, I don't know, take the particulate out. And so we put we turned on the machine, and we were doing some roasts, and then it would work until like a moment when it would like shut off, and then smoke would funnel rather than outside, like into the building, so into where I was roasting. So it would be black smoke, like I couldn't see me to you all of a sudden, because there's a emergency temperature shut off on this electrostatic precipitator that I had to finally get, and something like 350 degrees and it kicks off, but we're putting 400 degree air into there. And so we'd punch a hole in the wall outside and draw a fan in to mix cold air with the hot air before it goes into the electrostatic precipitator. And that worked for a little while until we'd do like 10 roasts in a day, and it would like click off. Yep. And so there was a time, this is like, I didn't have any employees, obviously. It was like very, very, very grassroots beginning, where it's just me and this big piece of machinery. And there was this moment where I was doing that. I couldn't, like, it's smoky. I grab the ladder and I jump up there because there's organic material and it's just hot, and it's funneling smoke like into my face as I'm like trying. And so I grabbed like green bean bags, the big burlap bags, and pulling out these filters, using them as hot pads to pull out these super hot filters before there's a fire on the ceiling. And I just like had like an imminent fire, can't see anything. And once I got everything like cooled down and I got it sorted out, I just went to the Cafe Marlin's over there, just all alone. And I ordered a coffee, and I was like shaking. I was like drinking coffee, just like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. Just one of those things. There's 100 of those.
I feel like that story, because we talk about it a lot, being in coffee, and I've been in coffee for over 10 years, and I'm sure, Nolan, you can relate, starting a business too, is that there's a romance. Like, always see there's a certain romance, especially in the coffee world, when you want to start a business, because you just want to wake up and make coffee for the day. And I feel like you took all the romance that you might think in a startup, and that's actually how a lot of it goes. There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
How often would you say, so you had surprises, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the afterburner or now you need this piece, or now you need, in order to roast in a space like this, now you need to add on this. How many, one of those things per month of the first 5 years of being in a business? How many surprises? How often would you get a surprise?
So, right, Angela, you're exactly right. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know a lot. And so I think immediately everything was just like, I'm in over my head. So first of all, I'm hungry. Like, I need to make this work now. But I'm also like, in the back of my mind, oh crap, I bit off way more than I can chew, because we've got this space and we've got this roaster. And at the time, like, we're still in the same spot, but it just was a huge room with a small roaster, and it just felt like, okay, it's a small business, and he bit off a little more than he could chew by like, you need to make this work now. And so I think everything was a surprise, and part of it too was like, I hadn't been awarded grit yet, and that was soon to come. But so everything was a little bit more magnified anyway. I think when you do any new thing, like what's big and scary becomes normal. And so that was very true. But it's like just facing those little fears and facing, like I have to do sales. And I kind of thought that I'd come into this business knowing like, oh, I know how to do marketing. I have a good handle. Like I knew this much about all of that, and manufacturing something, working with the FDA and the local health department and all of these things that like ask more questions about how do you do this, and like, oh, you need to be certified with this and this, like, oh brother. So always in the back of my mind I'm thinking there's no way that this is going to work. I'm going to be the 60-year-old guy who tried coffee one time and is still giving away free coffee to his friends from that Mighty Missouri experience. And that's why I can't believe that 10 years have come. Like that's insane to me. But what's really wild is that the way that it began, when I started like a business plan, the first business plan I have is laughable. Like it's embarrassing and it's a piece of garbage. But I thought I needed one, and a business plan is supposed to be guidance for the future, which I haven't looked at that business plan forever because I was a moron. But what it was interesting, like I knew that I could sell to some coffee shops, but and maybe make their espresso, things like that. But what I was really interested in was the branding of Mighty Missouri Coffee. Like I wanted people to seek out Mighty Missouri, a brand of coffee that they wanted to drink. Well, if it's under someone else's private label, they don't know that it's Mighty Missouri. And so I needed somewhere to go and get coffee. And I was kind of following other roasters from across, like, I don't know, other roasters that I admired. And they would sell at Whole Foods. You know, you could get them at Whole Foods. We didn't have a Whole Foods. We had Dan's Supermarkets, which were locally owned. And I think they had 6 or 7 locations, like in Dickinson and in Bismarck, Mandan. And so I had talked to them, like, while I'm doing all this, like, the training for the coffee. And at the time, it's like, this is what I'm going to do, and you think that's really impressive. And you learn pretty quickly that no one is interested in what you're going to do. It's what you're doing. So I talked on the phone with the buyer from Dan's, and he had said, yeah, it sounds like something we'd be interested in. You know, enough of like to give me confidence that, like, yeah, we put a check mark there. We could put our coffee on the shelves there. And there is a lot of coffee on the shelves in grocery stores. It's crazy. It's like absolutely crazy. But go through this nightmare of starting everything up. All of the startup didn't realize I had to fly someone in from Probot, the company that makes the machine, here to do the initial setup. Like, oh, brother. All of that nightmare, and I finally get like a bag that's printed Mighty Missouri Coffee, and it's the roast that I'm proud of. And so talking to the other people, the people again that I had talked to for sales, with quotes, and hey, here's the coffee that you know, are you interested, whatever. So I called the guy back, the buyer from Dan's, and he's like, you know, coffee is it's really hard to get on the shelves. There's a lot of competition there, or whatever he said, and we're just not interested right now. And I was like, that was the thing that I really wanted, was to get started. Not that it was like gonna make me a living, but that people could go there and get Mighty Missouri Coffee. And so I was like, oh man, you feel like you have done this big momentous achievement by stepping off the precipice and diving in, and then it's like, that was a mistake and you landed on your neck, is kind of the feeling, like a gut punch. So it's like, oh, well, could I just drop the coffee off at your office? And he said, you know what, we're going to pass on a meeting altogether. Like, oh, okay, that's too bad. Which I understand. Yeah. Like, I'm just a kid. And I was, at the time, I was helping a friend. I was volunteering for a concert, Matthew West, Christian Grammy Award winning musician. And he was at Shiloh Christian School here, sold out crowd, and I was just helping. It was for North Dakota Teen Challenge and donating my time. And so I would be a runner for their tour manager and whatever they needed. And I was standing there, and Matthew West came in, and I was wearing my new Mighty Missouri shirt. And it was, it said Mighty Missouri Coffee on it. Not this one, but something similar. And he's like, hey, Matthew West comes in, and he's like, hey, what's this? Is it local? And I'm like, actually, it's mine. And it's just starting, like, literally this week. And he's like, great. Is it your passion? Like, is it your dream? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And he's like, well, you've got a really cool shirt. I want one. So I called Dakota Screen Arts, this was my sample shirt. This wasn't the one that I had, like, purchased. And so I called Dakota Screen Arts and asked, and they said, we have some more or whatever. And I guessed his size. I raced down there and raced back. And I talked to the tour manager, and I said, I think Matthew West wants this. And that night then, watching with my friends, he's wearing a leather jacket. You can see Mighty Missouri Coffee underneath. Like, how sweet of him to have done that and worn it. So I was, like, freaking out with my friends and took pictures and stuff. And then he took his jacket off, and he's like, Mighty Missouri Coffee, my friend is opening. This is my favorite coffee, and it's opening in Bismarck. Like, he talked about Mighty Missouri for probably 2 full minutes on stage, where it felt like Mighty Missouri had sponsored that concert.
Sure.
It was insane. And then I had a website, and so after that event, people were going to my website because it was insane publicity.
Yeah.
And this is week 1, maybe day 2, 3. And people were emailing, like, where can we get it? And so I responded to every single email that came in, and I said, ask Dan's. Because I knew at grocery stores,
Genius.
if you ask for something, they tend to get it, especially the local places, and they're good about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many more days later, it might have been a week, might have been a few days, but the same guy emailed me. I think it was like almost like he hadn't heard from me before. He's like, I hear you're doing coffee. We'd love to get some or something. And like, yeah, you remember? And so I was just like, I was trying to get like one SKU in at that point, and every single Dan's took like a row, and everyone was excited about it. So I started that way, and it was a billboard, because every Friday I would go, like, so I didn't even know. I mean, I'm embarrassed about all this stuff, but I would go in my little Ford Escape, and I'd be sitting behind huge tractor trailers of like you know, bread and Pepsi or whatever, and I'd just be sitting in line with my little box like this, like patiently waiting an hour at each spot to place my 6 bags of coffee, whatever. And I would go there, and first I said, all right, well, when you need coffee, just send an order. And they're like, that's not how grocery stores work. And so I would go to all the Dan's in the morning, see what they needed, and then I'd create an invoice, go back, fulfill it, drive back. I mean, talking like out of gas and out of time. Like, this is kind of not a money making kind of pursuit, but it was quite a billboard. And it was something at least that I could say, hey, Mighty Missouri is launched. You can get it here. You can get, you know. And then I started to actually make some accounts that made money. But like when I began, I was doing other jobs, and this was like that thing that was like really shaky that I need to start. But motivation was really hard because it's like big and scary. And that was I think was the most lonely piece of it. It was really lonely.
Because, like, how do you, I mean, for anybody who's even doing a startup, like, how do you push, like, what made you push through that? To, like, maybe Dan's was, like, that thing that helped you get over it, or, like, was there anything that really drove you?
Well, everything was, like, I said I was really hungry.
Yeah.
And that was, like, out of a necessity to make this work. Like, I'm just going to have to push down every barrier that I can to make this thing happen. And even like when you're half a year in and it's not really going like, you know, the guys from Rapid City told me that it would, like I'm going to have to figure it out anyway because we're not making money the way it is, but I have to start. And so I think that's where I got some grit. Reviews online. Like if I got a bad one, it wouldn't ruin my day like it does now. It doesn't ruin my day now, right?
It's like a few minutes now.
It bugs me.
Then
But then it would ruin my week. I would pour on it. It's my baby. Like this is everything that I'm investing my time in. And you'd hear more. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I heard more about maybe I heard more good than bad. But the thing that I was listening to was, hey, Brian, you really have a sucky product. And I would ruminate on that. Yeah. And then I would go on a weekend or something and fish alone and just, I suck. It was bad.
But you came back.
Yeah. I think it was really hard to begin with. And especially because I was the only one who understood what I was feeling, I think, at the time. And I didn't have a lot of buddies who were entrepreneurs. Right. In fact, my buddies were doing the normal thing and getting regular jobs and getting really accustomed to the corporate life. Yeah. And my life didn't look like that. And it's like, what are you trying to do there? And, I think there was a misunderstanding there of, it's just we're different. We're doing two different things. Right.
And plus,
it was a really hard time.
No one's going to care more than you care about that.
Oh, and that bothered me immensely. I needed everyone to care about Mighty Missouri. Yeah. Nolan, I don't know if you had a similar experience with Quantum Digital.
Nobody knew. Nobody could care because nobody knew. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like when I came from news and I was like, well, I'm going to go start working for businesses and making commercials and doing online content and all that stuff. And there were 2 or 3 of us in town who did it. But it was still always, oh, I can just do that at the news station, right? And so it just wasn't even a thing that people understood, let alone cared about.
Sure.
So it takes a long time of like getting people to understand, even your parents. Hey, he's out there playing business, he's out there. Oh man, I didn't really think, oh, how long you been doing that? Oh, 5 years now. You have? Oh my God, it worked. Good for you, man. I'm proud of you. Yeah. Oh, I needed, people don't understand. Yeah. I needed that at the 6-month mark when I was just got done with a fire staring at a cup of coffee at Marlin's. Like when you're sitting there out fishing and ruminating over one, somebody who wasn't happy with a customer experience or whatever.
Like the flavor of it.
And somebody, the people who are proud of you, and it's impossible to know, and it's impossible to tell people because you're already asking for so much from people, right? Like you're already asking for support in one way or another. It's really hard to also ask for, hey, guys, this is how you can care about what I'm doing, and ask them for even more while you're consumed in this, these steps that you're having to go through to get your roaster running or your just business word of mouth going out. So the people who need to be like a Matthew West, right? It's like, how important was he to you, right? How do when your friend is starting Mighty Missouri Coffee, how do you be a Matthew West for them when they don't ask for it?
That's a really good point, because looking back, like at that moment, that was incredible. Like it was exactly everything that I needed. It filled the tank. It got me excited.
It's like you're a fan.
Yeah. And that's the same exact thing for like restaurants specifically. A good review, a like word of mouth, something like that. Like that means the world to a small business owner, because maybe I'm hypersensitive to it. I am a bit, Angela knows. But like you have to be careful with the voices you let in your head, because the loudest ones tend to be the negative ones. and it's not true, right? But
Right.
there's a lot of people who love it, but that's not always what you hear.
But at some point, there's got to be a lot of self encouragement when you get in those positions, because, like you said, who's in your corner and all that, and all we need is people just to be like, hey, just be interested and encouraged. But you don't always have that, and it's like, it's a lot to get started and to just encourage yourself.
Yeah,
To get
and it's to
going.
me that's learned.
Yeah.
And also like being a self promoter makes me like, it rubs. I hate that. And I feel like that a lot. Nolan and I do video stuff together and promoting Mighty Missouri, and it's like, it feels self-important. Doing a podcast about something I did feels self-important, but it's like, actually, okay, people might not care, but there is, I know that there's something there that, like, there's nuggets there that I learned. And honestly, like, if I was starting again, and I would be like, it'd be helpful to hear some of that like crazy, and it is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
This stuff.
And I think the motivation, like, it can come from a Matthew West type person, or somebody in Dan's who kind of speaks before they can and says, like, yeah, that's something we'd be interested in. And you need to remember when you're young in business, like, don't count that as a win yet.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get demolished, like, down the line.
Hey, you sounded positive. Let's put all of these eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And then drop the basket.
So
Drop the
I mean,
basket.
understanding, like, oh, okay, I love where I'm getting my support from,
Mm-hmm.
but also understanding the downward spots of the roller coaster is when somebody's really getting your hopes up, but there's no confirmation, there's no contract, there's no anything.
Right.
And counting your chickens before they hatch is, I think, one of the biggest things that I fell into and still fall into. Because anything can come up, and then it's like, oh, budget's got cut, sorry, July 1st, nothing. Nothing. It's a no-go now.
Yeah.
Hey, I know we were buying 30 pounds a week. We're going to go down to 12.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not knowing when those curveballs are coming has to be, especially in consumer packaged goods,
Yeah.
right? How it's ever fluctuating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the advantage that I found, was working with, there's other people who were dreaming about their own thing. And those people, their dream was to open coffee shops. And so I needed to come alongside them without having worked. Like, when I started this whole thing, I got a job as a barista, and, like, learning everything that I can about coffee, but also not coming from that background. Like, I'm not, for me to sell my coffee, I mean, it was really an uphill battle, because I had to learn everything. So I had a very part-time employee who'd come a couple hours on a Tuesday. Foodie, like, new coffee, and I learned a lot. And we developed espresso together and stuff by going to a coffee shop after hours and using their espresso machine. But then I had the problem of, like, where can people get it? Like, people, we developed this Borealis espresso. We're really proud of it. And people would message online, like, where can we try it? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.